Good evening and welcome. Tonight we will be going over the history and geography of Bn Tre in Vietnam. Bn Tre, as you can tell by its shape, you can see here, is part of a river delta. Now, what is a river delta? Some Geography 101. A river delta is where a very large river meets the ocean. And in that inland area where it meets the ocean, it fans out in a triangle shape into many different branches as it flows out to the sea. So, the river we're talking about is one of the most important rivers in Southeast Asia. It is the Mekong River. You can see Mekong River Delta, which is a very huge, powerful river flowing down through most of the countries here in Southeast Asia and flowing out into the Pacific Ocean, into the South China Sea, right here in Vietnam. It fans out into three different rivers here in Bn Tre province, and I'm most likely going to mispronounce them. So if you speak Vietnamese and my pronunciation is just egregious, if it's just so bad it's shocking, you can correct me down in the comments down there. I don't mind. The three rivers, you can see one of them right here, the Co Chien River. It fans out into the Ham Muang, kind of in the center. And then on the end here is the Tien Yang River, out to the sea. And of course we're going to take a look at all of these geographic features on Google Earth after we do the history portion. So, if you're going to fall asleep by then, don't forget to give this video a like right now before you fall asleep. If you're still awake, if you were that tired and you're already gone, have a good night. But just don't forget, okay? This is a farming area, and they primarily, of course, grow rice, which is like the one crop that thrives in this climate and environment in this corner of the world. And of course, a staple food in Southeast Asia and East Asia in general. But the most famous crop that grows here is coconuts. And I should probably save this for the history portion, but we're going to get into it right now. Why not? There is a tiny river. There's a tiny island in the river right about here. So, of course, we're going to look it on Google Earth. Apparently, it translates to Phoenix Island. But that is the home of the coconut religion, which, according to the Vietnamese government, is classified as a cult, which I suppose it's a cult by definition. There was a man who became a monk in like the late 1940s, left his family, went into the wilderness, I suppose, and just meditated. And he only ate coconuts. And he founded his new branch, I suppose, of like Buddhism, I guess it is, mixed with his own thoughts that he came up with during his time in seclusion, I suppose, while only eating these coconuts. He came up with his own religion in 1973, moved to the island here, started his own little compound, collected followers. One of them was John Steinbeck's son, where the main principles are 1, meditate, and 2, only consume coconuts. And that's pretty much it. And from what I can tell, the founder has since passed. Because when you think cult, you think, oh, it must be malicious, so they must isolate from their friends and family. From what I can tell, that's not happening. I have experience working with cult survivors in my past, so I take that very seriously. I didn't see any evidence of that, but you can still visit them, and I believe they own a skincare brand called Coconut Religion based out of Hanoi. I think it's associated with them. And whether they are or not, if you would like to sponsor me, I'll gladly accept. I'd gladly take a sponsorship from you. I love skincare. But that is the weird, wacky fact from this corner of Vietnam. The coconut religion exists here. So let's get into the actual history here. From what I read, no serious settlement began here until the 17th and 18th centuries. 1600s and 1700s. And of course, it was obviously just farmers, right? The French very famously occupied Vietnam and would control this area by 1867. They occupied most of Southeast Asia, everything but Thailand. They established the town of Bn Tre in 1900. It wasn't called that. It's been through a bunch of different names, but I'm probably going to mispronounce them, so we're not going to go over the history of the various name changes here throughout the various regimes that controlled this little triangle in the delta here. Just know that the names flip-flopped all throughout the 20th century. It is actually a very important little corner of the world in terms of Vietnam's history and pertaining to the Vietnam War, as we call it in America. In 1959, and again, I might mispronounce this, the Dong Khoi movement really first happened in Bn Tre. It sparked all over southern Vietnam. But I think the most prominent one was here in Bn Tre. Now, what was the Dong Khoi movement? It was a movement sparked by what was happening in North Vietnam. So if you don't know, after World War II, Vietnam split essentially into two different countries, North Vietnam and South Vietnam, very much like Korea and a bunch of other countries around the world split into. You got Yemen, eventually Czechoslovakia, but that's a little different. A bunch of countries split into, thanks to communism. So the North was communist, the South was democratic. And communist ideologies were really picking up steam here in the South. You can see Ho Chi Minh City is just around the corner here. Back then, of course, called Saigon. And in order to further implement these ideologies, they started the Dong Khoi movement, which was to popularize northern ideas and stage protests. Here in Bn Tre was actually very interesting because most of the protesters were women. The most famous being Nguyen Thi Dinh. She would actually go on to become the first female general in Vietnam's, history. But her movement with the other women during this time led to Ho Chi Minh nicknaming them the Long Hair Army, which I think that's kind of quaint. And actually, the very first conflict in the Vietnam War happened just outside of Bn Tre, but in Bn Tre province. In January 1960, the movement reached a boiling point. I actually can't remember who acted first, but if I remember, there was a movement, the Dong Khoi protest. The South finally overreacted and lashed out, and that was enough for the North to declare war. So the very first, shot, I suppose, happened here in Bn Tre in the Vietnam War, which would stretch out, of course, into a decades-long Cold War proxy war, right? The United States heavily interfered in order to fight back against communism, but they were doing it to help Vietnam and the southern Vietnamese, but they were mainly doing it to show the Soviets how much they didn't want communism to spread. That was the main reason. So the United States lingered for far longer than they should, throwing all of their military might at these soldiers, the northern soldiers, primarily known as the Viet Cong, and stayed far longer than they should have. So in order to have one big push against the United States, the northern Vietnamese launched the Tet Offensive in 1968. Tet being New Year's, which is actually in a couple of weeks. I'm filming this in early January. It'll be in a couple of weeks, Tet. As people were relaxing, enjoying the holiday, thinking that it was a safe time to stop fighting for a bit, the North Vietnamese did a huge push. And it was the beginning of the end of the American occupation, I suppose you could call it, the American interference. Part of that big push happened here in Bn Tre. Like I said, 1968, the Battle of Bn Tre occurred, which is mostly famous due to a reporter who allegedly was on the scene and took a quote from an unnamed army officer who basically said, I'm reading my notes, it became necessary to destroy the village to save it. Which is, of course, extremely ironic, and the anti-war people had a field day with that quote. We have no proof that that was a real quote. It could have been made up by the reporter for all we know. But it was essentially a summary of the American mindset in Vietnam. That in order to save this ideology, they need to completely wipe out the country. Which makes no sense, right? That's absolutely insane. So that was the legacy of that battle. And of course, it was only about a year or so after that the United States fully pulled out. They were gone by 1970. Definitely throughout 1969, they were pulling out. And today, Vietnam is a communist country. Well, communist. I don't think there's any communist countries in the world today. Personally, I don't think there's ever been a communist country in the world, like a full, actual Marxist, communist manifesto communist country. It's always been picked over. I've read the Communist Manifesto. I had to read it for school. It wasn't like I just read it one day because I thought I was curious about communism. I had to read it for an assignment. Countries like Vietnam pick and choose Karl Marx's words to accommodate it to their country. Communism, I think, would actually work if there was no corruption at the top. It requires everyone at the top to treat everyone down at the bottom fairly, right? Like you're supposed to. Everyone's supposed to be a comrade. It just doesn't, and we're humans. There's always going to be corruption. So Vietnam is communist in name. Definitely in the past 20, 30 years, they've done what China has done up there and lean more towards consumerism and that aspect of capitalism, pumping out cheap products. Vietnam pumps out a lot of coffee. They export just as much coffee as Brazil does, if not more, which is nuts because Brazil dwarfs Vietnam. They've really worked on their export culture. You can get all kinds of stuff from Vietnam today. You can get skincare made from coconuts. You can get all kinds of stuff. So, they practice stuff in the name of communism, but it's not a full-on communist country, and not to be like shady toward Vietnam's government or anything. That's just, I don't think there's any communism in the world today. Like true blue or true red communism. If you understand what I'm saying, I hope I'm making sense. That's kind of my opinion. I should have stated that. People get mad when I insert my opinions into history. But, yeah, I suppose you could disagree with me on that. But, I mean, you can't argue that it's a Marxist country nowadays with all of the consumerism that happens. I mean, they have, Starbucks here in Vietnam. They have all kinds of fast food. I know in Bn Tre I saw a Jollibee. So it's not as communist as I imagine Ho Chi Minh would have envisioned, right? Only in name. Only in the fact that there's one party. And that's about it. But I'm going to stop rambling about communism. We're going to head over to the tablet, and I'm going to show you some of the neat things that I found in this little corner of Vietnam. Let's head over there. Here we are in Bn Tre province. Let's start by zooming out so you can see exactly where we are in the world. Now, it's going to be a lot harder to see this river delta as opposed to like the Nile Delta. The Okavango Delta is easy to spot because it's already extremely lush and green in this corner of the world. You can see here is Vietnam. Hanoi is up there. We've got neighboring Cambodia here. There's Laos. The South China Sea is there, and China's just a hop, skip, and a jump up there. Philippines over here. Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore is just over here. Which we're going to go to Indonesia later this week. Just a heads up. So yeah, it's a little harder. I wonder if I turn off the filters here, you can see it better. Yeah, kind of. You can definitely see where it gets a lot greener, right? Than the rest of the country, because it's very flat, very marshy and mucky, as most deltas are. Alright, let's head over to Bn Tre to start. Hello. Oh dear, am I? No, this is making sure I'm actually in the city and not just where it's labeled. There we go. Here we go. So I didn't find a lot in the actual city. If you saw my video yesterday, you learned of my strife of me tapping on places that I didn't know what they were, and turns out that they were all like wedding reception venues, like halls. So now I'm just plagued on Google Earth by wedding reception venues. So hopefully I don't tap on any more accidentally, because I can't read Vietnamese. But let me show you what's not a wedding hall that I found. I just have to remember where it was. Let's see, if I follow the main roads, that should take me there. I love this roundabout from above. Isn't that cute? If we go over here following the main road, darn, I forgot where everything was. And of course, I literally checked where everything was right before, like a couple hours before I filmed, and now I've forgotten. Oh goodness. Maybe I'm looking at the wrong main road. Okay, think. Like Pooh Bear, think. Where were the spots that I wanted to show you? I think that's the wrong road. But that can't be. Look how prominent it is. Maybe it's just further in. Okay, let me see. There's a lake in town. Maybe it was. I am in the right town. Bn Tre, yes. Okay, you know what? I think I'm just turned around. I think it's this way. Now we've got it. Now I'm not lost. Now I know where I am. There's the cute roundabout I was looking for. And this is what I assume the main outdoor plaza here. Oh, really cute. And a lot of these pictures are clearly from last year's TED. Oh, cute. Cute littles. Because it was the year of the dragon. And you can see the lights here, the cute babies, oh my gosh. All the decor, little lucky coins, all of the lights that are set up here and probably being set up now as I speak for, I believe it's the year of the snake, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Cute kids, oh my gosh. Ta-da, ta-da, ta-da. Very cool. Big fun space here. And then if we go further down, there's a really neat memorial here to the Dongkoi movement, which looks very North Korea-y, doesn't it? North Korea is very infamous for its statue industry, where countries can commission statues very cheaply made in North Korea, and they come out in this, like, I assume what they're trying to do is Soviet brutalist style, but it comes off as just very blocky. Let's see a better picture of the statue. It is really neat. Don't get me wrong, but I bet you anything, $5, that statue's made in North Korea. It's a good picture. And there's this beautiful wall mural as well, commemorating those who fought for Vietnam and communism in Vietnam. Are you kidding? I thought there was a... Oh, here we go. It was the very last picture in the slideshow. Just block people, right? Like they're made out of Lego or something. How they're wearing pants, but it just flows into their bare feet. Like it's AI. Thankfully, they probably have the right amount of fingers. But I believe... Oh, I forgot her name. And it's dark, so I can't check my notes. Win Ti Din. I believe that's her right there. And yeah, if it wasn't so North Korea-y, it would be a cool statue. But that's how they make all their statues in North Korea. Like they're giant blocks. But cool nonetheless. Let me look at this. I haven't seen this slideshow. Dongkoi Park. More pictures of the statue. Big gate there. And beautiful garden, green area in the middle of the city. Always very nice to have. From what I've read, Bn Tre is not a tourist city. There's really not much for tourists to do. There are sights to see that we're about to look at. Oh, that's cool. I like that. It's neat little dragons. But it's not like tourists flock to the city for various tourist activities, right? It's a pretty quiet city, bird of paradise there. Of course, it's not a quiet city. Of course, there's all kinds of things going on, but it's not like you're going to catch tourists like you are in like Halong Bay, other parts of Vietnam. So now that I'm oriented, I should be able to find, it'll be over here, I think. Over here. Over here is where the first shots were fired in the Vietnam War, and there's a cool museum here for the Dongkoi movement. It's really pretty to commemorate the events that happened here. Let's see. I got lots of photos and dioramas there. A cute baby. Lots of cute babies here. Lots of, I assume, plaques and memorials. Cute babies. Oh my gosh. and just remnants from the conflict all throughout this museum. Really pretty space. Oh my gosh, I can't. The Vietnam kids are just too much for me to handle. They're too cute. But yeah, you can see some weapons there and photographs from the Vietnam War, which was, of course, devastating to Vietnam. I mean, if you looked at this country like 50, 60 years ago, it would be completely different than it is today. It's completely rebounded from those times. So these popping up are little, well, not this one. This one's actually really cool because there's this cool rope bridge that people are standing on, and it looks kind of fun. I'd probably be scared to do that. But there are many little memorials. Wait. Oh, I found it. I think this is the one I was looking for. I was trying to find, yeah, oh my gosh. I knew I was going to find it live. Winty Din's memorial. It was not popping up the times. Oh, maybe it was. I remember this turtle when I was researching. Maybe I did find it. I just didn't realize that I was looking at it at the time. This is her. I guess that's her motorcycle. Beautiful water lilies there, and a memorial to her. So there are lots of, there's her TV, I guess. Lots of memorials to famous people who lived in this area. This is one of them. Oh, I did find it. I thought that was someone else. Let me find another. I think there's one down here. Yes, this is for Nguyen Dinh Chu, who was a famous poet during the time of the French occupation, and he was very anti-French, which makes him a national hero today, of course, pushing for independence and self-reliance of the Vietnamese. He actually fled to this region, escaping the French, I assume up in the north, so that he would not be persecuted and he could write his poetry and speak out in peace. There he is, Nguyen Dinh Chu. And hopefully I'm saying that somewhat correctly. Let me see. I want to say there was one more, but I can't remember where it was. I cannot remember. There's one more for another Don Khoi soldier, I want to say, but I don't think I'm going to remember where it was. Anyway, let's go look at the coconuts. It would be right here. You can see there in the Mekong. Here we go. So they have built this compound, and I don't think you're ready for it. Let's take a look. I know there's a couple slideshows here. If they'll load. There we go. So they have built this huge, extravagant paradise on Earth. I think mainly for tourists to come and ooh and ah at them and pay the admission fee to support them. But it's very surreal. There's some crocs right there swimming around in the pool. It's all very surreal, all very dreamlike. The big old coconut. There's the coconut trees. And here's some faces in rocks. I'm sure those are important people. But it's all quite splendid and magical here. Look at all of this. They're having a great time. Yeah, look at this. This could be by like a Hieronymus Bosch stream if you just saw my art video. Or even Dolly, right? I wonder if that's supposed to be the monk. And it's this big tangled mess of a big old playground for people to come and I guess just gawk at it. I know there's another slideshow, but there's a homestay right there. But yeah, this is where you can find the coconut religion. Do you think this convenience store has some pictures? No. I mean, maybe the homestay. Maybe that was the other slideshow I saw. Let's just peek real quick. Yeah, look at this. It's a fun time. It looks very relaxing. I like all the bamboo. It's probably... And you can drink your coconuts here. Drink your coconut water. Cocoa Island. Yeah, that's really beautiful, isn't it? Whoa, that's a neat bed. A round purple bed. They're having a great time. Look at the little huts there along the marshy river here. Probably also full of crocs. That's really pretty. Look at all this. Pretty cool. Now Google Earth is going to think I want to look at homesteads and resorts and things, but that's okay. We're going to head down to the south where I want to show you one of my favorite things about Google Earth. Head down here. If we head to this part, yes, you can see the beautiful farming landscape, which just tickles me. Let me turn off the roads here. It just tickles me to look at little patchworks of farmland, as regular viewers know, and this is just too much. This is so pretty to me. It's just this big jumble, almost looks like looking at plant cells under a microscope, but so much more jumbled, and the little puzzle pieces fitting together. Isn't that so quaint? And the walls are so bright against the dark water there for the rice fields. Look at all these little uniform ones. Those look like plant cells. I just think it's so neat to look at farmland from above. Maybe that's just me as an American who's flown across the country a bunch of times and looked out the window and only seen patchwork farmland and circular farmland, and been like, that's kind of neat from above. But I think it's fun. We are going to look at some beachy areas. I think this is the one I did put on. Or maybe this one. Yeah, this one. Because I think it's the very last picture, but we can see some cool beachy areas and yummy food and the ocean. I think another memorial there. And that would be me, because I love the water. And look, see, now I've learned something the last time we did live trivia. In America, we call this a wind farm. There's a better picture elsewhere. Apparently, that's not a thing elsewhere. Let me know if you don't live in America and you say wind farm, or tell me what you call big stretches of wind turbines. Because in America, we call them wind farms. All the food you can get. Yes, this is what I wanted to show you. You can see where the water of the river mingles with the water of the ocean. And I love to see places like that, where two watery worlds combine. That is neat. All of the muddy silt coming down the river, flowing out to the sea here, and creating this cool gradient effect. I love that. Oh, that's a pretty picture. But yeah, I think up here you can see more wind turbines. Yeah, see? It's a wind farm. They're harvesting wind. What else would you call it? It's a wind farm. But yeah, big ol' wind turbines. Big deal in Vietnam. Renewable energy is the way to go. There's more homestays. My goodness. All right. I think we're going to close it out on this beachy slideshow. This one's really pretty. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this style of content, please consider subscribing. This is an ongoing series on my channel where we go to every corner of the world in alphabetical order. And next, we're heading back to Moldova, Or are we? Are we heading back to Moldova? Because we're actually going to a corner, I guess technically of Moldova. They don't consider it, but the rest of the world does. A corner called Transnistria. Transnistria, they don't consider themselves part of Moldova. They consider themselves part of the Soviet Union. Not Russia, the Soviet Union. The only corner of the world that does not recognize the fall of the Soviet Union. They believe that they're still very much a part of it and are, speaking of communism, still practicing as much as they can of those ethics today. But it's a really beautiful little town, really beautiful little fortress, the Tikina Fortress. We'll take a look at that. You don't want to miss it. It's very charming. Be sure to subscribe so you won't miss out. If you've never heard of Transnistria, you have to subscribe because you won't believe it. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up before you leave. Especially if you learned any cool facts today, I'd appreciate it. And let me know any cool facts you learned down in the comments. What was your favorite part? I always love to know. I hope that you found this video to be relaxing and educational. And I hope that you have a good night. Good night. Good night.